Welcome back. This is a scientific terms video for the evidence for evolution chapter. There's two reasons why you should know your scientific terms. The first reason is you can actually be, your exam questions can have your scientific terms. So if you don't know these terms, you might be kind of confused in your exam because you won't know what the actual term means. And the second reason is in your short answer questions, the more scientific terms you use, the more you use them appropriately, the better marks you get. So if you can know what they mean and you can use them properly in the exams, that would be a big advantage. So we're going to go over the ones which we've learned in this chapter. The first one was evolution, and evolution was a change in life over time. So that over time usually refers to millions of years. So most evolution takes a long time to occur, but that means that life itself isn't always the same. Things change a bit over time. So that's how we had dinosaurs at one stage and only bacteria early on, but we went from one cell bacteria to what we have at the moment for evolution. Then we've got something called variation. That was all about having slight differences within a species. So for example, we said that human beings have slight differences. We have some people who have lighter skin, and some people have darker skin, some people have different eye colors or hair colors, or shape of their arms is different. There's usually quite a few slight differences within members of a species. So we are all the same species, but there are slight differences. Everyone is unique. We've got natural selection, and that was the survival of the fittest. The idea that nature selects whoever is most adapted to its environment. So the idea of survival of the people who are the most adapted, or the organisms that are most adapted to the environment. In the picture up here, I've got a bird and two bugs, a green bug and a white bug. And this bird has the bug as its food, and it can see the white bug clearly with its hawk eyes, but it won't be able to see the green bug too well. So these different colors are the variations. So the variations for the green one and for the white one, that color difference is a variation. The rest might be the same, but they have a different color. So this hawk eye will eat the white one, and the green one will be left over. So the green one is the fittest one, survival of the fittest. The green one has survived that, and now can reproduce and produce more. Right? So natural selection has selected the green one because it has favorable variations that allow it to survive. Species, a group of organisms that are very closely related. So species, we all belong to the same species in terms of human beings. That's a group that is very closely related. Paleontology, that's the study of fossils. Transitional fossils, that's a fossil that's between two different classes. For example, we have the cruciferous fish we mentioned earlier, and that was between a fish and a amphibian. So they had features of both the fish and the amphibian. That's why it's called transitional, it's in between. Biochemistry, that was the study of chemicals and molecules found in living things. So for example, DNA, proteins, amino acids, looking at the structure of those, comparing them in different animals, that's biochemistry. Or biochemistry itself is the study of chemicals and molecules found in our body. Biogeography was the study of the distribution of living things, so where we can find living things. So we said, for example, we can find the warta plant in both Australia and South America. Even though the plants are slightly different because they have evolved into different plants, they still are quite similar as well. So different types of warta plants. That's the distribution. So biogeography is where we can find living things. Comparative anatomy, that was the comparison of bone structure. So that was important because we compared especially the forelimb of different vertebrates and saw how similar they are. So that's comparative anatomy, comparing that bone structure and seeing if there's any differences or similarities between animals. We've got comparative embryology, and there was a comparison of embryos. Remember, we did that as well, and the reason why is because embryos were quite similar, especially for the vertebrates. So they all had gills early on, very early on, and a very similar look. And then it changed when it became a bit more mature in terms of 28 days later. Scientific theory, so that's not just a theory, but it's a theory which is supported by a lot of scientific evidence. So the theory of evolution is a scientific theory because we have all this comparative anatomy, comparative embryology, biochemistry, biogeographical, and paleontological evidence to support that theory. But yeah, a scientific theory is a theory that has a lot of scientific evidence backing it up. Crossopteran fish, remember that was a fish, a transitional form. So between a fish, had features of a fish, but also had features of an amphibian, which made it that half-half. It was the one that could breathe oxygen and has its fins which can walk on land. Pentadactyl, remember penta meant 5 and dactyl meant fingers, so it's something that has 5 fingers. A vertebrate forelimb. Again, that forelimb part kind of refers to your arm, but like for example, a bat doesn't really have arm, but you can just imagine that a vertebrate forelimb is that part that is our arm, which might be something else in a different mammal or a different animal, but it's meant to be that arm structure. And yeah, we compared that vertebrate forelimb and we realized they were quite similar for all different vertebrates. And what that's called is a homologous feature. So homologous feature is a feature which is similar in organisms or in a range of organisms, so in quite a few organisms. So that's what we said. We said that all the vertebrates have that same forearm structure, which means they have a homologous feature in terms of their forearm, their forelimb. Divergent evolution, that refers to evolving into new species. So one species becoming two species, and that usually happens because of isolation. If two sets of members of a species are separated for too long, then they become two new species. We've got convergent evolution. Convergent refers to coming together. So that means unrelated organisms, so genetic organisms which are genetically very far apart, very different, but they share very similar features. We have the example of the shark and the dolphin, even though a shark is a fish and a dolphin is a mammal. So that means they're genetically very different. They have very similar features. They have a streamlined body. They have fins as well. And the reason why is because they have a very similar environment that they live in. They live in the ocean and they have to hunt fish and have to be quite fast. So those features come because natural selection determines that those are the best features to have in that kind of environment. So even though they're not genetically similar, they're similar in terms of their features. So I hope that was useful.